Hello and welcome. My name's Burke and I'm here today with Bob Cooke, the founder of the Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy. And today I'm going to be talking to Bob about top tips, self-care and self-management for, well, maybe you can tell me that, Bob. Who is this video aimed for?
This video is aimed mainly for psychotherapists, counsellors and clinical practice, but on a wider scale for mental health professionals who work in a variety of fields. I was just thinking of doctors, nurses, clinicians that might work at GP clinics, CBT therapists, people who really may take on unconsciously a lot of the distress, the toxic energy, the irritations, the psychological disturbances of the client.
Right. And so you're talking about people where there's a possibility of a secondary or a vicarious trauma possibly happening.
Yeah.
And so your top tips are going to help anyone who needs to look after themselves in those professions you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I know that you're a Gestalt psychotherapist again, so that's why I'm asking into conversation. And so we'll both have some tips, I think. Talk about that, because you've worked for over, 20 odd years, is it?
Yeah.
As a psychotherapist. So you work daily with what I'm talking about. We know that if even in the psychotherapeutic world, if I walked over the road, had a cup of coffee with somebody who's depressed, after 10 minutes I'll probably feel depressed myself.
Yes.
So how does a psychotherapist, counsellor, or anybody in the mental health field we're talking about stay adult functioning in a way which is healthy, and they're not taking on those energy processes and feeling bad, because then of course they won't really be able to work effectively with the person in front of them. So vicarious trauma is a really good way of looking at it. So what would be one of your thoughts or tips that you give people who are watching this in terms of self-management and self-care of themselves?
I think that one of my top tips would be to actually recognise what our own capacity is.
Oh, good. Tell me a little bit more about that. That's really interesting.
I think that as individuals, and obviously we all are.
We are.
Yes. We have a certain capacity, and it's just not about the number of clients that we would see, but also considering what issues they are bringing to us.
Good. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that's really interesting.
I think that if someone is working with issues that would touch on their own history or what is happening now in the moment, it is more likely that they would have these psychological disturbances that you were talking about.
Yes.
And there often can be, as we know, a parallel process that happens.
That's right. So what do you suggest they do if this occurs?
I believe that they need to be gaining support from their supervisor. Right,
that was going to be my tip, so I'm glad you can take it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that one.
Carry on.
Yes, so I'm interested. I think that it is really important for the professional, and of course it's not just psychotherapists and counsellors, all of the people that you've said before, psychologists, etc., will all have supervisors, and that is one of the things that the supervisor can do.
I agree entirely. And following on from that, in terms of top tips, because it's in the same field, I think it's very imperative that therapists and counsellors have support in terms of therapeutic support as well as supervisory support. Some people would argue they go together. I think we separate them. And I think it's very important that psychotherapists have therapeutic support. Now that's an interesting one, because if you're trained to be a counsellor, you don't necessarily, in terms of the BACP requirements, have to have your own counselling. in the psychotherapy world, with the UKCP requirements, you have to have your own therapy. And even if we took away regulations, I believe that to not have your own therapeutic support isn't helpful in many ways, because what we're talking about in terms of taking care of yourself, I think you need to have that support. So
I would agree with you entirely,
yeah,
Bob, on that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, what else would you suggest for top tips for looking after yourself?
Well, this is one I really talk about a lot. I think it's very, very important to develop your own passions and your own interests in life, and not to be a 9 till 9 psychotherapist 7 days a week.
Ah, so you're talking about external hobbies?
Yeah,
all right,
external hobbies, like
yes.
watching Manchester City.
Yes, that's yours. That's yours. That's one of yours.
That's one of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, another one of mine is chess. I play tournament chess. I do a lot of walking. I do cycling. I go to the theatres, pictures, other places where I can get replenished.
Yes, and again, I do agree with you. I think for us to be whole people and not just whole therapists,
correct,
then we do need those other external stimulations.
Yeah, because if our batteries get completely depleted, we've got nothing coming back in terms of energy and energetic responses and, you know, spirituality, if you want to look at it that way.
Yes.
To vibrate us, to be actually energized and be able to be with our clients in a therapeutic encounter.
Yes.
So I think it's really important, that area.
Yeah, and I think I'm aware, I often say to clients, you can't draw from an empty well.
No.
And I think that, you know, it is part of our regulations. It's in our code of practice and ethics that we do take care of ourselves. Absolutely. To enable us to help others.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very important area that I'm always talking to my trainees about. So have you got another top tip? I think we've given 2 each here.
Yes, well, certainly one that I'm very keen on is holidays.
Yes, holidays.
Because it is that total break from. Because I think we would maybe both get calls at weekends, we'll work weekends. So actually to have periods of time on a regular basis that take us away. And again, I think that really replenishes. I think it really refills us up. You know, gives us that energy to be able to work.
I agree with you. And another sort of almost mechanical tip, if you like, which I would take as read, and I forget that I've been doing the job 30 years, but it's a very simple one and easy to do, is to not see one client after the other. Yes. To take quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, to be able to, you know, stretch, have a cup of coffee, go for a walk, let some frustrations out if you need to, talk to colleagues, but to take that time, because if you just go one client after the other, you are not taking care of yourself. No. And actually, you're not helping the clients in front of you.
No. And also, you said about going for a cup of coffee. I think that it would be quite easy for some people to maybe forget to eat even during the middle of the day. Yes, I mean, I think we've both seen that. However, that general taking care of yourself, when we look at sort of just our basic human needs, you know, as you say, to go out, fresh air, take some lunch, and actually give yourself some space is a really, really good
important
tip.
One.
Yes.
Yeah, and on tips, another one would be to, I talked earlier about having passions, having extra stimulations. I also think in our own professions, going to conferences, actually specialising in other areas of psychotherapy rather than the ones which might dominate us, to actually mix in that collegial area. It gives us that enrichment in terms of support.
And often it also re-sparks our connection, because our profession can be lonely. We work on our own for the majority of times.
That's right.
So my top tip would have been about peer support.
Oh, say a little bit more about that.
So, and as you say, with conferences, that, you know, assume that other therapists will be there. However, I think if it's possible to actually be able to speak to other therapists about what is happening in your practice. Obviously, we have rules of confidentiality, so it won't be about our clients, it will be about the impact. Now, it can be on a less formal basis than supervision.
No, I totally agree.
And sometimes when you come out of the session, it is, and it can be really valuable to actually just give somebody else some of what's happening for you.
No, I really agree in that.
Yes.
It's very important. And you know, last week, it'll be 3 or 4 weeks now, a therapist in this area, he was doing a dissertation, I'm not sure what dissertation it was for, but anyway, it was about effective qualities for competent psychotherapists.
Yes.
Knocked on my door, and I talked to him for a while, and he said, what would be the #1 quality that, you know, is important in therapists to be effective? Now that's a pretty hard question. What is the #1? So, as reality TV host said, it is in no particular order, but the number really at the top would be humour, joy.
Yeah.
So to allow ourselves to get in touch with our own sense of joy, our sense of humour, and not to get so bogged down in the, you know, often the worries, the challenges, the anxieties, the neuroses of our clients, is something I think we need to consciously remind ourselves. I start my psychotherapy groups off, and I run 2 every week and have done for the last 28 years, 6:30 to 8:30, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Right.
And we run this group, so I run them. And I always start off by the same way. To each member of the group.
Yes.
Tell me something positive.
Yes.
Or something you've enjoyed during the week.
What a fabulous way to start.
Yeah, because it sets the tone to the different neurological processes and lifts the spirit a bit.
Yes.
Before we often go to those darker places.
Yeah, that's fabulous, Bob. Well, thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.
For joining me today.
Thank you.
And obviously this video will be available on your YouTube, which is TA Therapy. And I too will put it onto mine.
Good.
The Gestalt Therapy. So thank you very much.
And thank you and take care of yourselves, of course.
Yes, do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.